Greetings, this is starseedscotty sharing an astrological horoscope for April the 11th, 2019. So let's look at the chart. So the moon will be in Cancer, approaching the North Node, which is at 22 degrees. And the main thing I see a lot of is, we have an exact square between Mercury in Pisces and Jupiter in Sag. And I believe Jupiter has just went retrograde, which will mean that the outward expansion of our searching for new beliefs, searching for new ways of exploring our life, it's going to be challenged with Mercury. Mercury is in detriment in Pisces, like I said before, because Mercury rules Gemini originally. And Gemini squares Pisces because it's the distinguishment between logic and emotion. Gemini is logic, Pisces is emotion. But Pisces is a very transpersonal emotion. Where the moon is now, I would like to think of it as Cancer would be the unconscious emotion. Scorpio would be the subconscious emotion. Subconscious is the underworld, and also the interdimensional places, which is why the 8th house is the occult, it's the unknown, it's magic. So that's the subconscious. That's where we can reprogram, as well as, if we don't reprogram, then we're ruled by our programs, the unconscious and subconscious. So if Cancer is the unconscious, Scorpio is the subconscious, then I kind of see Pisces as the superconscious. Now, they do say quite often, many astrologers, that Pisces rules or Neptune rules the collective unconscious. And that's because I think in our society, we pretty much live in a dream, and in many ways a delusion. But we share our dreams, we share our emotional bodies when we interact. But there's something about Pisces that I consider the superconscious, because Pisces being the last sign, to me, it's this duality between the 12th house is often about confinement, but also liberation or universal spirituality. So there's a lot of conflict here, I see, and I'm definitely feeling it, a lot of confusion, because Mercury's been retrograde with Neptune for maybe a couple weeks, and Neptune's been squaring Jupiter as well earlier this year, and that was a lot about the distinguishment between our beliefs and our faith. That's kind of one way I would distinguish it, because belief is like a mental understanding, how we see the world by our experience and the information we have. But faith, to me, is different. It's an emotional trust. That would be more Pisces, because there's something in the spirit world that's just, it's not logical. It's not, you can't just it's not something we can, instead of being an answer, is more an experience. Because I like to say, knowledge is information, but wisdom is experience. And so I think this square is really going to be asking us, are our beliefs authentic? Are they true? Because Jupiter is very much about truth, and Mercury in Pisces, it's kind of trying to figure out, is our logical understanding of Mercury, how does that relate to our story of our spirituality? Like, where do we come from? Who are we and where are we going? That's the simplest way I can put that Piscean universal spirituality. So I think, yeah, I mean, Mercury will be entering Aries next week, so this won't last too long. But Venus will be squaring Jupiter as well, because Jupiter's going to be at this 24 mark for some time, probably. And Venus is actually, see there, I'll clear this. Venus is very close to Mercury. Venus is here at 19 degrees Pisces. Just conjoined Neptune yesterday, and that was very soft energy, really inviting us to explore our inner relationship to our spiritual connection. With Neptune, and Mercury is a lot more to do with ourself because it's our mind. And Venus is all about that spiritual love. But there probably can be shadows, because if we do not have a relationship with whatever we consider, or however we define spirituality, then we will see, it's quite logical, and I can perceive it often. We will, if we do not come to terms with our own definition of spirituality, then an external form will come towards us. Like, if we do not take our power, someone will take it from us, or show it whatever we haven't owned. It's kind of this, there's some law behind it. It's a spiritual principle, cause and effect. I guess karma could be. And the reason I'm saying this is because we're in a big, heavy square, actually sextile, but it's heavy energy because it's Saturn, Pluto, 500-year cycle on the South Node. So the South Node is at 22 degrees Cancer now, and this is a 500-year cycle. So imagine what's happened for the last 500 years in terms of Capricorn themes of power, control, and one way I like the way Leo can put these two planets together is it's structured transformation, I think you put it. Saturn is structure, and then Pluto is transformation. But I think there's definitely stuff that has to go. Pluto is, as I've said in another video, is this kind of almost like a composting agent. It's something that it transforms stuff that's decaying, and changes it into something that can grow again. Death creates, when things die, they get recycled so that new things can grow in nature. So that's the simplest analogy. And then in our lives, with our ideas and our things that are dying inside of us, in terms of they're just not working, Pluto wants us to transform that. But with Saturn there, it's transforming it by changing our structures, our routines, what we plan for our life, what our goals are, how we relate to society. So Saturn is exactly sextiling Venus now. So I think this is asking us questions of how is our relationship to our, with Venus and Pisces, it's our higher self, and our relationship to how we feel when we, for example, I have a very strong connection with nature, and I have a spiritual connection with that, because when I'm there, I meditate, and it gets me out of all of the pain and all of the suffering and just issues I have in my own experience, because I can just focus on the present moment and be with feel the energy of the natural elements, like the winds, the earth, the sun. Just so that's my relationship, which is Venus, and the spirituality would be the nature part. And the sextile to Saturn would be how that's the structure. I do this every day. I go to my local beach every single day, meditate there. And that is my structure that helps maintain my balance so that I can facilitate more transformation. But Mercury is exactly sextiling Pluto. So I think that's really asking us of, like, if things in us we're avoiding them, think Pluto will reveal that, because one of the shadows of Pisces, and especially with Mercury, because Mercury doesn't, in Gemini, just likes everything to be logical facts, and with Pisces, it's not. We're not going to get that. It's not a straight answer because it's a feeling. So I think we're going to be, if we have delusions in our life, things that we use escaping mechanisms, which we all do, and I think it's a way around it. This one person put it that there's a way to escape forward escape, and that's by using things that that take us out of our normal sense of awareness, that might be in loops in certain in stress states, or something that can allow us to get outside of that so that we can go back in a refreshed state. So for me, I use a lot of herbs, medicinal herbs from around the world, roots and berries and barks and medicinal mushrooms, for example. And I've been doing these for years, and they take me, as I take them as a routine with that Saturn structure, then the transformation, because they're transforming my consciousness, because so many of these, they call them nootropics, which is actually a term which means smart drug, because it can enhance our intelligence by changing our physiology, our cardiovascular system, and our brain. So by escaping in one sense, by having these altered states of consciousness, it can allow us to have a space from the problem we have, in order to, when we go back to the problem, we can see it from a different perspective. So I think that's one light side of seeing escapism. As a Pisces, I know this very well. But I think that the real shadow of escapism is when we avoid something without even wanting to be in denial, without even wanting to see the problem again, just to deny any issue even exists. And I'm sure you can relate to this, because it's something that so many people have. They're in. It's absolutely, to me, it's quite disturbing, where people live in like a fantasy, really. And I think fantasy can be beautiful with Venus, because that's where we can dream of things we love, things we're passionate about to grow. But if we do not look for at least the most accurate truth, that's I just think it's really important that we search for what's true in our lives. I mean, there's, of course, with Jupiter square Mercury, truth is a question of like, what is truth? But just in simple terms, it's what's true for our lives, and to the best of our abilities. I like to say what's true for me and my external experience of the collective simultaneously. So I hope some of that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, it's just there's going to be, I think there's not really ways to avoid this turmoil of confusion and delusion, but just like I always say, it's just, for me, the most reassuring thing is to ask the higher self, whatever our sense of expression of a higher power in our lives, to ask for that guidance, because there's some principle that we can only get help from the higher realms or from other people if we ask. They say God or Spirit helps those who help themselves. That would be a real motto of Pluto and Saturn. They want us to be very responsible. It's so nice to be spiritual, but if we're not trying to be practical in the earth, which is Capricorn, then we're part of the problem. That's what I see so much. I see just about everybody I see are living a and maybe that's not my place to judge, but I'm just concerned because these lies can only be hidden for so long. So the other thing I want to talk about today is there's a square. Well, actually, before that, so the Pisces stellium is being trined by on the 20th, on the 11th, by the moon in Cancer. The moon rules Cancer, so that's going to allow us to go a little deeper into our emotional body, to feel into if a thought feels right. So I always go by my intuition, which is a Pisces Cancer theme. Is when I'm trying to decide what the truth is, what the best for the circumstances are, I will go by how it feels in my emotional body. And if it feels really, it's kind of hard to describe because it's not a thought that comes, it's like this gut feeling, and also in the heart. There'll just be this kind of, it's almost like a resonance where you feel everything feels aligned when there's a truth, but when there's something, a lie or confusion or something that's not accurate, the emotional body will always, actually more often than our mind, tell us by a kind of uneasy feeling. So it's just nice just to check in with our body and the courses and decisions we're making, to ask if it feels right, simply. Because as the moon approaches North Node, that's our destiny, and that's Cancer, emotional security. And if we can have emotional security in our own internal world, then we can help others so much more, and by sharing our emotions. So North Node is conjuncting Jupiter, so that's definitely going to be asking a lot of questions of how do we explore the higher meaning of what we really value in our Cancer theme. So the house that you have Cancer would give you an indication. Also, the house where your Sagittarius is. So yeah, I think I've made it pretty clear. It's a good time just to be aware of feelings, definitely, because that water trine is with Venus and the moon. It's I think with in our interactions with other people, emotions, our emotional honesty will be questioned with that square, especially to Jupiter. And the moon will be squaring. It's actually a T-square here, the sun. So all this stuff I've been talking about, it's really focused on the self, because the sun is in Aries right now, 22 degrees, and that T-square it's the axis of emotional security, Cancer, physical security, Pluto, Saturn, and then individual security, Aries. And they all kind of connect, but the two squares is the challenges of our physical security, which is often a conflict of Capricorn, Aries, because Aries just wants its own way. It just wants to kind of, get its impulse, its desires, its instant gratifications, but also it's a survival, because it's the first sign, and it's our ego, it's our drive just to kind of function. But Capricorn wants us to function with society and how our individual unit works in the greater scheme of things. And we have to, square is a challenge because we have to adjust our ego and adjust our individual needs what the collective needs. And our work, whatever we do in the world, that's the indication of that. I have Mars in Capricorn, and ironically, that's an exalted sign because Mars is tamed with the energy of Capricorn. Mars rules Aries, but sometimes Aries is known for not getting things done because it's so much fire, so much intensity and aggression that it burns out. It just maybe doesn't see the forest or the trees. But Saturn and Capricorn is the other way around. It sees the trees, it sees the forest, but it doesn't see the trees. And so when the Aryan energy has a containment to focus on, then it can actually, I believe it can, the exaltation indicates that our willpower of Mars can get so much more done when we have a plan, when we have a vision of where we're going, instead of just aimlessly being in fight or flight, which is it's very common things in the world right now. Because Mars is in Gemini, and it's been sextile. It's 7 degrees Gemini now, and that's amplifying the mental energy even more because Mercury, Gemini's mind, Mercury ruled, and Mercury is in this mysterious position of Pisces. So I think Mars is asking us just to ask more, be a little more playful, a little more lighthearted, because Gemini is not as deep as Pisces necessarily. It's all about just the day-to-day things of like the routine, or we brush our teeth, we take a shower. This is Gemini stuff. How we go to the grocery store and what the clothes we put on. It's just very, very basic ways in which we interact with our. It's almost like the autopilot of our mind. When we can do things, we're not thinking, but it's autopilot. That's Gemini. It could be Virgo as well, but it's certainly Gemini with Mars here, because Mars is our will to act forth from that. So Mars has been sextiling Chiron, and that's been kind of nice to just explore what Chiron really means. And this transit with Aries has revealed so much shadow stuff in my ego already, and it's only been here for a month. And I think it's really necessary, because if we don't heal our individual self, which is Aries, how can we heal the planet? If we have wounds inside of us that we're hiding or we're unaware of, then we can unconsciously pass that on to others. And so it's a very serious healing crisis type of thing, which Chiron's all about, with the wounded warrior archetype in Aries. It's very important for us to look at all the wounding, because much of the wounding we have is just, it's shared. And in Aries, we can almost inherit it, because the way that our personality is structured and our society, to me, it's quite bizarre. The programming we have to act a certain way, and we repress our emotions, and we have pride. Ego is adored, and there's a lot of shadow with the ego, and I think as Chiron's going to bring it, dredge it up. And with Mars sextiling it, I think it's asked us just to kind of probe just little questions of like, I always encourage others just to ask, what is our ego? What is our desires? What is just basic questions of like our internal nature, just to ask them. Ask the question. We probably won't get the answer because it's a very deep thing, but one step at a time can help us go forward. Baby steps, right? Aries is the first sign, it's kind of the baby, and Gemini is like the kids. So the last thing I'm going to talk about today is the Sun is in Aries, as we've talked about it, and it's actually squaring. It's squaring Pluto and Saturn. It has been squaring Saturn, and um, it tomorrow will be squaring Pluto. So I've actually already talked about this. It's the sense of our physical security. Actually, I have talked about this because it's T-square. So the T-square, the physical part, I've talked about the Pluto Saturn. We need to know where our place is individually to serve something higher in terms of society. But something needs to transform because there's so much that's dysfunctional in our world. And Gandhi said, "Be the change you want to see in the world." Because it's so easy to complain. I mean, there's millions of things we can see that is dysfunctional and corrupt and dark. But just by blaming, another quote that I'll never forget someone said to me is, remember if you're pointing your finger at someone, because there's always 3 fingers pointing back. Which is to say that to judge something is very easy, but quite often that judgment is indicating there's much more in our internal world that's being projected. But just to be the change we want to see in the world, I think is really helpful. And this T-square is going to really be challenging because we need to heal our emotions as much as our relationship to the Capricorn external world. That's this Cancer side of the North Node. The North Node is our destiny where we want to go forward. So I think this is a time for a lot of emotional healing. But with the Aries Sun, it's just and Mars Gemini, and I think it's important to be proactive because these fire energies and actually the Sun is trining Jupiter right now as well, which is nice. That's adding a little bit more inspiration, I think, because you can get very easily be cooped up, especially this Pisces energy, just very in the ethereal realms and our mind. Just I notice it myself. Sometimes I'm just in a bubble in my own head. But when I'm in my Aries energy and just it's more outgoing, and Jupiter wants us just to expand. Because if we expand from all of our issues, get that bird's eye view, then we can come back down with a refreshed perspective and let the lesson come forth. So yeah, thank you for watching, and yeah, I just want to encourage you to know that it's okay to be confused. We're in a very, very intense time, a 500-year cycle, Pluto Saturn, and I think it's a good time to connect to the things that we care about in relationship to ourselves and others. Venus in Pisces and Mercury is a really, really nice energy to look for the things we love. Music, that's a good example. Sometimes to hear a song can take us back to childhood where we were in a blissful experience. And it's those subtle things of seeing the little pleasures in life that I really think can help us triumph over the trauma. Because trauma is going to be coming up. It's in our collective. It's almost like a metaphor I use often. It's like a reservoir. It's being dammed. So quite often, in rivers they will block it off by creating a dam. But that dam, you can say, is our emotional collective unconscious field that has so much healing that hasn't been done, but it's been hidden in the dam. But that dam is eventually going to burst. But if we trickle, we just open it up, let the water flow out a little bit, and just let the wounding come forth. Then when it is there, we can surrender to the higher power, which is Pisces, just to have an openness, a space for that. And I think that can help us, if that makes sense. So yeah, with Venus and Mercury, I would say make, the last thing I'll say is, if we can walk, we can dance. If we can talk, we can sing. And that can apply for anything. So yeah, thanks for watching. Until the next time, aloha from Hawaii, and keep shining like the starseed you are.